Gonna hit it back again. It's Football in Focus, back from the Kickback Jacks on Battleground Avenue, talking a lot of high school football. Big season right now. The second season's almost set to begin, but the first season will conclude tomorrow night. Got some major games going on. Got the big matchups with Dudley going to Mount Tabor and got Page going to Ragsdale. What about that Dudley to Mount Tabor trip tomorrow night? That's one people are pointing to. That's for the conference championship, pretty much.
Yeah, it's going to make things interesting if Dudley can win that. Then you've got a three-way tie among Dudley, Southwest Guilford, which beat Dudley early in the year. Their only loss 34-6 in Mount Tabor, and then it's a blind draw to determine 1, 2, and 3 seeds. And we've heard that draw occurred earlier this week. Haven't got anything official on what the result was, but if Mount Tabor wins, then they win the conference championship outright, and Dudley's third because they would lose the head-to-head tiebreaker from losing to Southwest Guilford. But a huge game because the difference between first place and third place in a conference in the NCHSAA playoffs can be in 2 home games a lot of times, and that makes a huge difference.
What about this? Here's a big question. We hear a lot about Dudley, know a lot about Dudley, see Dudley quite a bit over here, but what about Mount Tabor? What do we know about those guys? Any thought on Mount Tabor, what they have, and what they do, how they play?
I have not seen them. They like to go. I know they like to go fast because I've watched a couple teams practice and run scout team to prepare for them. They do a lot of motion. They're very athletic. The Dudley players I talked to earlier this week said that they watch them on film and they make a lot of hustle plays. They run sideline to sideline. So it sounds like it's going to be a real challenge. And obviously their defense was good enough to really shut down Southwest Guilford. That was a controversial ending with that field goal, 17-14. That's been a very interesting conference overall this year. The new Piedmont Triad 3A.
It's got people's attention this year. It's been a good conference because you need something during the season. It's not like a one team running off, leave the other teams behind. At least some good competition. There's been good competition there.
Yeah, and Parkland, which is going to finish fourth, is not a bad team. And playing with 2 freshman quarterbacks, only 3 senior starters on offense, 3 on defense. Parkland's a team we're going to have to watch out for the next couple of years. That's going to be a very strong, deep conference.
Just got to keep the coach there, Coach Savick. Got to make sure he stays there. Hope he does. And once you get that team developing and kind of get the team built up, you definitely want to stay and see all that come back to where they used to be when they were like a state champ about 15, 20 years ago, back in the days of Jed Bynes and Monte Purvis and those kids that went on to do pretty well at Winston-Salem State or thereabouts. And you look at Dudley. Is Dudley doing some growing up now? These guys are growing up. You talked about it a little bit, hsextra.com, about the fact that guys like the linebackers Davis and also the young man there, Landon Johnson, both those guys are starting to grow up, trying to fill those positions from last year's guys. Connor graduated and Peel graduated. Are those guys among the Dudley players starting to grow up now and fill those spots?
Seems like they've made a lot of big plays, tackle for loss type of plays and sacks as the year's gone on. They've been getting better. Early in the season, not only were they new, but you were down 2 or 3 starting defensive linemen. We talked about it all year. Caleb Matthews with the arm injury. They hope maybe he comes back in the playoffs. Ronald Gilliard, blood clots, couldn't play anymore. And Reggie Robertson's been in and out of the lineup with
up and down all season.
Hamstring injury that wouldn't go away. He's had some illnesses. I mean, it's been a rough year. So a big part of those 2 guys, Geronte Davis and Landon Johnson, growing into those roles is having that defensive line, keeping them clean and not having blockers get to the second level. As the year's gone on, I think that's happened more and more, and they've really become comfortable reading plays, making plays behind the line, shooting the gaps. They both look like really good players, but a little different style. Connor and Peel were much bigger, bulkier guys. Not that they couldn't cover sideline to sideline, but these 2 kids are much more, to me, speedy and athletic.
More like runners.
More like what you see at the college level now, where teams are going all in on speed and not as worried about size. They want guys who can cover receivers, who can blitz, who can run sideline to sideline and make tackles. And you have it with both of those kids. They're both very talented.
And we know Johnson, he's a junior. What about the other kid,
also
Davis?
a junior.
That's
so
a good
so
thing.
They're going to be
Good
back.
thing,
And that's a very good thing going forward for Dudley, that they will have those 2 next year's seniors to anchor that defense.
Starting to build that team up now and trying to get more and more guys healthy. The Reggie Robertson thing, if they just get him healthy, would be a big plus, I'm sure.
He's such a factor, and he's a leader. It's not just what he brings.
People know that number 50 pretty well.
Yeah. And they've gotten good play out of some other guys. Cochise Pope has moved over he still plays a little on the offensive line, but they've had to use him more on defense. He's in the backfield a lot. Mark Shannon's had a really good year. It's not like Dudley doesn't have talent without those guys on the defensive line, but it's been the experience thing. That's what Coach Davis has talked about all year, is that the guys they had who were seniors last year, most of them had been 3-year starters, and the other guys just hadn't gotten that many reps behind them and hadn't been in the big games. Now they're starting to get into those big games.
What about the defensive backs, DJ Crossan and the guys back there keeping things together back there? Antonio Miles Berry, I guess he's still out.
Ankle injury there. He had a fracture a few weeks back, and I think that's probably going to prevent him from playing.
Fracture.
But you never know. We had Tucker Horde a couple of years ago for Northern Guilford, fractured an ankle on a muddy field at Western Alamance in like game 6 or 7 of the season, and he was back in the playoffs and played great for them down the stretch. Miles Berry's a tough kid. I wouldn't be surprised if there's any way that he can come back that he does, but you have to think of your future, and he's obviously got one at the college level.
What about you look at the overall with this Ragsdale-Page game? I know Malachi Manus, an outstanding running back for Ragsdale, definitely a focus for Page's defense going in.
Yeah.
What about Devin Boykin? Isn't it important for him probably to get that passing game going and take some of the pressure off Manus? Because I think Manus is number 5. They load up on number 5 all night long. I mean, Page will have their objective accomplished. Boykin and Devin's going to be able to throw that ball to Good and Pratt.
Yeah, those two receivers both have excellent size for the high school level, excellent size for college level with Travion Pratt and Trey Good. He's thrown the ball to them a little bit. He's not primarily a passer. He's another kid who's a sophomore. You get 2 sophomore quarterbacks in that game, and he's gotten better as the year goes on. His dad's the coach, so he has that experience. He's also a really good travel basketball player, a point guard, so he's got the mentality that you want at that position. And I think it's not just throwing with him, it's that he's also going to be a running threat, and if they're going to load up on Manus, you fake it to Manus and you kick it to the outside, or you kick it back inside and hope maybe all the defenses overplayed Manus.
And you look at the scores Page has had the past 3 weeks: 57-14, 48-0, 42-0. The opposing teams on offense have been able to get hardly nothing.
Yeah, I think some of that is that's when they got into the conference, and I don't think you'd get a lot of argument that the Metro 4A is down this year. You lose Dudley. Northwest has been a disappointment because of injuries and other factors, but I think you can look at those scores and kind of see what happened there as to who they were playing. The defense has been the constant all year. They've been a slow starting team. It's something I talked a little bit about in the scouting report on them. Every big game this year they've had that they've either been behind early or like last week against Grimsley was 7-0 with 3 minutes to go in the first half.
Could have been a 7th halftime game.
Very,
and those 2 quick touchdowns.
Slow starting team this year. It's taken them a while. Once they get rolling, they always have 1 or 2 drives behind that experienced offensive line with Javondre Page, with Sincere Davis, with the other guys that they have, where they just pound you and kind of beat you into submission and wear you out on one drive. But they need to start a little faster when they get to the playoffs.
And I'm thinking about a number on that team. The number in my mind right now is between 1 and 85. It's 84. That kid's going crazy.
Cody King,
still going crazy.
7 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. He's been a breakout guy for them, kind of a revelation on offense. But they have a very fast, deep receiving core with Assad and
Nick Baker gets open well too.
Nick Baker, Naeem Bradshaw. I mean, they've got a lot of talent at receiver. It's just a matter of Javondre Page making good decisions as to when he throws to those guys. But you get the ball in those guys' hands as a receiver or on a jet sweep, and they're dangerous. They can go all the way at any time.
Don't let that Cody King get outside. When he hits the sideline, he's pretty much gone.
He's not big, but I think sometimes that can work to your advantage when you've got his kind of speed and cutback ability, that you have a hard time finding him initially behind the blockers, and by the time you've got a beat on him or you think you have an angle on him, he's gone.
He jumps out of the group of players and just kind of dashes upfield and just trying to run him down.
He's got a running start, and you don't, and you can't get him.
And plus, he's got good side-to-side movement, too. He likes to put that little move on the opposing team. Little step here, a little step there, and makes you miss.
Yeah, he's been a huge development for that team on offense.
And you look at the game tomorrow night between Page and Ragsdale. Ragsdale, as far as the offense goes, they've got those. Just like talk about Dudley, so but Page even more so because they got experience at linebacker. You got to work with those linebackers; they'll kill you.
That defense, when you're talking about Alan Teasdale on one side, B.J. Turner, Alex Gray. I mean, there are some great linebackers in the senior class this year in North Carolina, individuals on particular teams. The Dax Holyfield kid down at Shelby and a few others. But I don't think there's a better core of linebackers than those 3 kids. They're all big-time players. They've all been in big games. They make plays. They can cover the pass. They can blitz. They can stop the run. That's where it all starts. And then you got guys like Cam Gavin up front. you've got a really good defensive back in Alex Angus. Elijah Short keeps getting better.
That's
just
a basketball kid too. Elijah Short,
yeah.
the man who wore the mask last year. He's getting very, very strong back in the defensive backfield now.
Yeah, I mean,
athlete.
Coach Jared Rolfes has been raving about him the last couple of weeks about how far he's come during the season, and that he thinks he could be a Division I football player.
And the funny thing, Jalen King is on the roster. I haven't seen him out there yet, but that's kind of wild. He's out there too, or was on the roster.
Another very talented basketball player.
That guy can kill you, kind of slice you to death the way he slashes the basket.
Yeah.
You think about it, you mentioned the linebackers good for Page being so good. Same thing with Dudley, those two last year. Connor and Peel were probably the two best in the state working together, what they did last year.
And that was...
Look at their totals. I mean, it's like 148 tackles, 155. They just had tons of tackles.
Yeah, it was just some ungodly stats that they put up. And they were 3-year starters. They took their lumps a little bit as sophomores, but grew into the role. And they were just such leaders, too, those two kids.
Do you give Northern much of a chance at Western Alamance? Everybody's got a chance, and they got to do it through the air, but that's a tough place to go and a tough team to try to take down at 10-0 Western Alamance.
Yeah, and a team that's picked off 17 passes and has a bunch of sacks.
Wow,
so
it goes against the air game.
Yeah, that's going to be tough for them. And there's a lot of on the Western Alamance side. There's a lot of bad blood going back to when Johnny Roscoe was the Northern Guilford coach. They don't like Northern. They think that they were robbed a few times against them. And
that used to be the game. It would come down to deciding the conference end of the year. Northern might make that trip to Western Alamance and maybe find a way to forge or find a way to get a sneak out a little win. But that was a good ending closer for a number of seasons to close out the year.
The first team in that conference to beat Northern was Western Alamance. They were the only one for a little while. I mean, Jeff Snuffer, the coach over there, has done a fantastic job, and his team is always good. I mean, they went to war last year with Eastern Guilford in a game that was just a phenomenal game to watch that decided the Mid-State 3A last year. Northern, their inability to run the ball with any consistency, I think they're at about 650, 700 yards for the season. You have to be multi-dimensional against a team like Western Alamance. As good as Northern has been throwing the ball with Ford Moser and J.J. Julian catching the ball and Jacob Leonard throwing it, when a team like Western Alamance knows that's the only way you're going to move the ball, you're going to have a tough time. If they stay in it early, they got a shot, of course.
What about Grimsley Northwest? The first part of the year, I told us that was the game we were pointing to, our last game, maybe of the year to be at. But the way things changed, everything changed. But is this a game that might get one of these two in the playoffs? Yeah,
that's the way it's looking. I mean, a lot of the projections have, based on the Max Preps rankings, Northwest is about 21 spots ahead of Grimsley going into that game. If Northwest wins that game, and they're 0-3 in the conference now and 3-7 overall, most people think they're going to get into the playoffs. And if Grimsley wins the game, it's a maybe. They would probably need some help. The only team that's really seems to be out of it in that conference is High Point Central, which is funny because they're 5-6 and they're done.
And they're done.
They're going to have a better record than Grimsley or Northwest, but one of those two could slip into the playoffs.
So it's strength of schedule for Northwest. It's kind of where they are today in that ranking.
Playing Reedsville, even though they got clobbered, helps them. Some of the other teams that they've played, I believe West Forsyth was one of their opponents. That's two unbeaten teams. That really helps you. I mean, Reedsville, I think, is like ranked number 18 in the state in all classifications, and West Forsyth's ahead of them. Page, obviously, being an opponent helps. All those teams help with strength of schedule.
What about Eastern Guilford at Southern Guilford? It'd be great to see for Eastern Guilford's standpoint. They want to win that game. I think they go 8-2, and it would be a great way to close out the regular win. It'd be 9-2.
Yeah, they're 8-2 right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would give them an unbeaten season in the conference, 6-0. They wrap things up pretty much when they won at Southeast, but they want to be playing their best football of the year right now, and they want to have a strong game.
And they've got the quarterback. I still like that kid. More as the year goes on, I think he's getting better and better. I think he's just getting a little, after the number of reps he's had over the years, and what do they call that, the ROBs or something like that?
RPOs,
yeah,
run pass options.
Yeah, he's getting that together too. The RPO is big right now. But everything he's doing is working well.
Yeah, a big turning point for that offense was their bigger running back, Christian McMullen, was out with an injury early in the year. When he came back, and then you've got him and Darryl Roberts, and they run some sweep action with Zacchaeus Milton, with Nick Cheely. Having that big back really opened up a lot of things for them, and it's made Graves a better quarterback because he's in better situations on second down and third down, shorter yardage when he is in those situations. And when he has the whole playbook to work with and they can hit you with the run or the pass, he's much more dangerous.
Picking that question a little bit here and there, not everywhere, but a little bit here and there, he is probably one of the candidates, maybe the top 5 possibilities for Player of the Year, I would think.
Yeah, we've been talking about that a little bit in the office, and it's the last few years. I think this is my 4th year doing high school sports for the News and Record. First year, it was Reggie Gillespie. It was a no-brainer. We knew that from like week 2 of the season. As long as he didn't get hurt, his numbers were going to be so impressive that there was no way it wouldn't be him. And he led his team on a pretty deep playoff run. He's had a nice career at NC State. He's far from done there. But and then the next year, Connell Young put up monster numbers for Dudley. He's up at Western Carolina now, playing slot receiver now, waiting for a guy in front of him at running back to graduate, but he'll get his carries up there. And then last year, you had 2 quarterbacks that we looked at, Hendon Hooker and Will Jones, and we kind of went into that state championship day thinking, hey, let's see which one plays better, and that's who'll get it, and it was Hendon Hooker. This year, to me, it's still wide open, but I think the playoffs are going to have a lot to say about who it is.
Guys like Malachi Manus and Dominique Graves and others here and there.
Javondre Page.
Yeah.
Page
That's the weird thing about it. I had trouble getting to a younger player like that, but he has definitely got the numbers to have him right in that mix. But this kid's he's only a sophomore, but I mean, numbers-wise, he's right there with the rest.
And like I said, I think it's for us, it's going to come down to playoffs and who does what there. You know, not just the numbers, but whose team makes a deep run and who makes the plays in the postseason.
Here's a funny thing, just kind of an impression I got in my mind today. I don't. Sometimes I get these ideas, I try to remember them, use them later as possible good sports talk fodder. But I was thinking about Will Jones, and Will Jones just comes back to Page this year, looks around, he's going, they're still in pretty good shape. Yeah. Because when you lead the team to a great notoriety, 2 years of season, you come back and, well, I guess they'll be down now. But hey, look at Page. They're still right there in the mix and playing well.
Yeah, I mean, they lost him. They lost Javon Leake, who's gotten a lot of reps this year. Maryland had a touchdown or 2, had some carries.
Not bad.
You know, you lose a guy like Tyler DeBerry, who, you know, he's not playing at the highest level, but that kid was a heck of a high school football player. I mean, to me, he won that game against Dudley for them last year, running down Hendon Hooker numerous times, including on a play where, on the next to last play of the game, where I thought Hendon Hooker had the end and he was going to get in for a touchdown, and DeBerry ran him down from behind. You know, those are tough guys to replace, but it's Page football, just like Reedsville, just like Dudley.
Reload.
They reload. There are enough talented guys in the program and good enough coaching that they're going to be back.
Tyler DeBerry is one of those kids. If he didn't make it to the college level, he's not playing college ball.
He's in college and he's on a team, but it's going to take him a while, I think, before he's ready to get on the field.
If he didn't make it in college, you might find him up in Danville, maybe up in Roanoke or somewhere, maybe playing semi-pro football. He's probably playing football somewhere. He can play.
He had a nonstop motor, to use the cliche. I mean, if you were showing a video of someone trying to explain what a nonstop motor was, you could show them tape of him, and he was in the backfield. He was charging side to side on the field, getting in on every tackle, being in on every play, and they've had a tradition of those guys lately. Before him, Elijah Diarasula, who's playing a lot and playing well at Appalachian State, and Cam Gavin's kind of that guy now.
Doing it now, yeah, he's getting there.
They've had that talent, and with their defense, as aggressive as they are up front, you need guys like that. You need guys who are quick, play nonstop, and can fight off a block or two, and they've had them.
And they don't have to necessarily make the tackle, just disrupt the play, hold him to the linebacker, gets him to help you out. That's what those guys are doing.
Especially when you've got the 3 linebackers they have this year. It'll be interesting to see what their linebacking core is like next year, because these 3 guys have been so good for so long that they're going to be starting over there.
What about Smith? They've got Western Guilford, I think it is. Smith could finish 5-6, and that is a very good improvement for them.
Yeah, and they're a likely playoff team at this point, which, you know, would be a big step for them. You know, you've got to start somewhere. I think there's definitely been improvement this year. The win over Eastern Guilford was huge for them. That was the week after Eastern had lost a tough one to Page, and I think there was a little hangover at Eastern for that game. But Brandon Wiggins is an alumnus. He cares deeply about that school and about those kids and about that program. And he's got it moving in the right direction. I don't think there's any question about that. We're talking about that Piedmont Triad 3A. Over the next few years, that conference is going to be very, very, very interesting, and it is already.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Parkland on the comeback trail, and Dudley's going to stay good. You know, Smith's going to be better, and they're getting better. You know, Mount Tabor's going to be strong. Southwest is not going anywhere. Got young players, so that's going to be a conference to watch.
Yep.
But some of those guys are hoping realignment comes sooner than it usually does. They might want to get switched up.
Get out of that a little bit.
What about, so Southeast and Eastern Guilford both have a chance to finish 9-2 with wins tomorrow. That's pretty good for both.
Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, Eastern, you know, they're a little disappointed because they were 15-0 last year going into the 3AA championship game. The 2 losses this year, though,
very
a
good
3-pointer
teams.
to Page and a 3-pointer to Smith back-to-back weeks where they could have won either game. So the difference between 11-0 last year and 9-2 this year, which is where they're probably going to be, isn't a lot for them. I think they were a little deeper last year than they are this year. They're a little younger this year, but that's still a team that you're not going to want to go to Gibsonville in the playoffs.
No, not the first 3
And
rounds. so for
Southeast,
sure.
you know, the job that Kennedy Tinsley's done there in his first year in terms of the vibe around that program and the enthusiasm from those kids. And he's got a bunch of juniors. He's got some guys who are going to be back. He's got Ryan Douglas, the quarterback, coming back.
Good shape.
He's got Jax Hackett coming back. I mean, there's some guys coming back.
What about the come back as you're there tomorrow night? You got 1 eye on tomorrow night's games. You got 1 eye on the playoffs. You come back Saturday, and here come the brackets right at you.
We hope so. The
I hope they're done by noon.
The
I mean, that's my
basketball
one.
ones last
I know,
year,
yeah.
that was a fiasco that they pushed it back till Monday.
Oh, man.
And I think the fact that they're using these Max Preps rankings this year is a wild card, and just the whole format this year is different.
I hope they've got their game plan down going in. Don't develop it as they go
Boy,
along.
you'd really hope that they would, because folks really, the coaches and the players want to have that full week to prepare
you know
for their
their site
opponent.
is going to be getting hit so hard on Saturday, just time after time, clicking on the ncsaa.org. Going right to
Yeah,
it.
it's going to be an interesting day. We'll be tweeting as pairings come out. We'll have them as quick as we can. We'll get some analysis up at hsextra.com. You guys will be all over it. We will too.
Nothing like the good old preliminary pairings. We'll have those too.
Yeah, and then how many times does it take after that? But
Right.
hopefully, as you say, they'll have their house in order over in Chapel Hill, and we'll get it done pretty quickly.
Looking forward to it on Saturday. What about the other activity come on Saturday? You got Clemson, NC State went to Notre Dame, took pretty much a beating in that second
Yeah, they
half.
did.
And then they come back playing Clemson, a chance to still win the conference, or still a chance to play for the conference championship.
Right.
When they lost Naeem Himes, the running back, I think it really sent them in a bad direction, bad spin. Reggie Gillespie comes in, runs hard, but he's a power back, not the speed back, so it definitely affected their offense.
Yeah, and I think the other problem that they had in that game was they're better defensively against passing teams because of that Bradley Chubb and the rest of those guys on the pass rush. Running teams, when you're playing against a really quick defensive line, sometimes you can misdirection them, and you can overpower some guys by running right at them. That was going back a number of years to Lawrence Taylor in the NFL. That was the book on him in the NFL. Don't run away from him because he'll run you down. Run at him and try to overpower him and double team him. That was how you beat guys like that. That's a lot of what Notre Dame did to State. They powered them, and Clemson has the guys to do that up front. I don't know that they have the backs that Notre Dame has.
Tell you that back, Notre Dame had that one back that got to the second or third level. Once he got to that second level, he was gone.
Yeah,
No catching a guy.
And I think that I think surprised NC State a little bit. I think State bounces back and wins this game because I don't think this Clemson team offensively is as good as they've been, but I thought NC State would go to Notre Dame and win, so what do I know?
Tell you one thing, we know one thing, the former Clemson quarterback messed up his knee in practice. I think he's
Deshaun
out for the
Watson,
year.
really, really bad
That's
news
bad
for
news.
him.
He was
for
beginning
the
to
Houston
throw some
Texans.
touchdowns up.
Yeah, he was looking like your rookie of the year, and Houston was building everything around him, and it's unfortunate. You never know how guys are going to come back. Teddy Bridgewater, a couple years ago for the Vikings, had a horrific knee injury in practice. It wasn't just an ACL; it was a bunch of things. He hasn't played since.
I heard his name at all.
Yeah, I mean he's still on the roster, but you don't always come back from those. We've gotten so accustomed to having that arthroscopic surgery and everything being taken care of that you couldn't do years ago. You couldn't save Gale Sayers' career and some guys from back in the day who we would love to have seen run more, but there are still some horrific injuries that you just can't come back from.
Going to be making it tough trying to get him back, but we got some other ACC games too. Wake 5-3 at Notre Dame. Wake goes to Notre Dame, and Wake Forest had a very strong outing last, I guess, against Louisville, right? Beat Louisville, beat them pretty well, put the offense together, gave up some points, but had plenty of points on the board. You hope they go to Notre Dame and beat Notre Dame. Like to see them knock them off if Wake can do that.
Yeah, I think Wake's best shot is that Notre Dame is still living in that NC State game, and they catch them a little bit flat after that. But if they're not, I think Notre Dame
Notre
just
Dame
has too
is
much
not
talent.
the Notre Dame team they were last year. Much better this year, Notre Dame.
Yeah, and some of that is the heat on Brian Kelly, the coach in the offseason. He was on notice that they expected more from him and from that program, and he's delivered so far this year. I mean, other than the one loss.
Funny about the Houston Texans losing Deshaun Watson. Maybe they should put in a call to Charlie Morton, see if Charlie Morton's available.
Yeah, he's got the arm for it. But Watson was such a good runner. That was one of the things that made him so tough.
What about Virginia Tech at Miami? That's another big matchup on Saturday evening here at Kickback Jacks. Around 8 o'clock, they kick off down in Coral Gables. Big game down there.
Yeah, Mark Richt, this is year 2 for him at Miami, longtime Georgia coach. Miami was his alma mater. He was pretty much a backup quarterback, but he was a Miami player. He's back home, really. He was an assistant at Florida State before he got the Georgia job. Things had gotten a little stale with him at Georgia. I think he felt like he needed a change, and Georgia was kind of complacent. They felt like they needed a change, and he's rejuvenated that Miami program, and it was a good change for Georgia because Kirby Smart's done a great job since he's been there. I think both Rick and
Worked out
Georgia,
well for both.
It's worked out great. You know, Mark Richt is back home and loves South Florida.
And you're not hearing anything about the Hurricane players off the field, which is a good thing.
No, they had some issues with that when he was at Georgia, but it was mainly DUIs and things of that nature. It wasn't so much violent crimes, but that was part of the issue at Georgia, but it hasn't been the case at all at Miami.
Okay, you got the Falcons take on the Panthers. The Panthers made a move this week, made that trade. Kelvin Benjamin's gone to Buffalo. Buffalo is playing out against the New York Jets. So you send him away, and he had the team, I think, 475 yards receiving for the year, led the team in receiving. He was one of Cam Newton's best friends because Cam came out after Kelvin Benjamin had a good game last week when they took care of Tampa Bay. So Kelvin went home to Florida. His mom had died. He responded well. Love this guy. I think he called him Benji or something like that.
Yeah,
but gosh,
yeah.
that's a major trade at this stage.
is.
This could either kill you or it could do something. You hope to help you, but boy, it's almost like losing a family member. Used Benjamin because he was the #1 draft pick, put a lot of money into him. He had the surgery, missed 1 full year, comes back, big target. Who knows? Maybe he's a tight end for Buffalo. Who knows? But gosh, Panthers, that's a big move, bold move.
Yeah, there's definitely some risk there. And the funny thing is, one of the things that was a knock on Dave Gettleman when they got rid of him as the GM was that he didn't care about the players and it was just a business to him. Well, this is we don't care about what anybody thinks. We're making a business move kind of thing for the Panthers. They say they want to get more speed at the position. They say that he and Devin Funchess, with the two of them, it's redundant. You only need one big receiver. The other thing I think that's kind of in the background a little bit is now they don't have to worry about how much he's going to weigh when he shows up at off-season workouts. I mean, that was an issue with him every year, and I think they just decided that get as much value in terms of draft picks as they could for him now. They're trying to go with smaller, faster receivers to get the ball out of Cam Newton's hands quicker. And I think this is part of that Benjamin was more of a deep downfield threat, and they want to go to more of a quick passing game and prolong Cam's career and keep him from getting hurt. But if you don't want to make him too unhappy either, though.
Right. I think Christian McCaffrey's already set the record for running back receptions by a Panther player in a career so far, or in a season so far this year, getting that quick pass in the backfield. The guy that caught my attention last weekend against Tampa Bay was this new guy, Clay, at punt return. Now, McCaffrey's in the first 2 weeks, kind of liked him back to developing himself, getting a little used to more playing time, but the Clay kid comes on and didn't know much about him. You got Samuels, they want to get him involved, but he's really got to become more reliable. Samuels with that ball.
Yeah, I think that I think it's clearly a move for the future. I think if they were playing great, if they were 7-1, I don't think they make that move.
Right.
But I think because the NFC South is kind of wide open right now, they thought, man, we got as good a shot without him as with him, and this will help us build for the future. A, to get guys playing time this year and figure out who can do it and who can't, and B, you got a couple draft picks for next season that you can either develop some younger guys or flip them in other deals.
A lot of football to talk tonight at the Kickback Jacks. Football in focus. Big game tonight at Kickback Jacks. You got the Bills and the Jets. Bills are Panthers are 5-3. Bills are better at 5-2, just percentage better.
Right.
But the Jets are 3-5. And Benjamin goes in that trade, goes right to the Bills. They're on TV tonight, right at it.
Yeah, I don't know that he'll play a ton because he's not going to know the playbook fully. There's probably some situations where they can put him in to run pretty basic routes.
You got your old buddy Mike Tolbert playing some fullback. You got Joe Webb plays some there. You got Sean McDermott, head coach. You got Mr. Bean, he's the GM.
Yep.
A lot of familiarity, though, for him. That's why they came after him, probably, because they knew what he could do.
They knew him, and there's a level of trust there. I mean, it's a little bit like the Charlotte Hornets bringing in Dwight Howard this year. Steve Clifford, who coached him in Orlando, and a little bit with the Lakers and knew him. And there's that level of trust between the player and coach or management, and you're willing to take a chance on a guy like that if you know him.
I still think he could be a good tight end if necessary, too, as big as he is. The tight end role has changed over the years, but gosh, I mean, look at the Panthers, what they've done in the course of time. He could do some of the same things they've done.
He doesn't like to block.
That's a problem.
And Greg Olson, as good a receiver as he is, he doesn't mind blocking. And Ed Dixon, he doesn't mind
doing
blocking.
the dirty work then.
Yeah, and that's it. Depends on the team. If you're a team that's going to air it out all the time, then yeah, you don't necessarily need to be a great blocker. Buffalo has been more of a power running team, but this may signal them going in a different direction. And he's a flexed out tight end all the time. That's
just
a possibility.
think Buffalo 6-2 if they win tonight. I mean, that's not a bad. Who is it? Tyrod Taylor at the quarterback.
Former
now?
Virginia Tech quarterback. Yeah, he's done a nice job there, and they're committed to him. He's their future, and he's been good. And they've been building this for a while. They've been drafted pretty well the last few years, and now it's finally starting to round into shape.
Sean McDermott came in at a good time and what they had on hand, talent available.
Yeah, I mean the talent was there, and I think that's why the change was made, was because they felt like they had the talent and they needed to go in a different direction and make it happen.
We got to the distant replay tonight, going back to the old Buffalo Bills from back in the 70s and 80s. And back in the 70s, they had that electric company, guys like you had up front, you had Mr. McKenzie, Reggie McKenzie, you had Joe DeLamalure, and those guys had a lot of talent with that team back then.
Yeah, great offensive line, and O.J. Simpson obviously behind them, and a guy from my alma mater, Jim Braxton, was the fullback on that team, and a heck of a blocker. I mean, those Buffalo teams were very good offensively. Defensively, and then you get into the 80s and the 90s and that Super Bowl run where they just couldn't get over the top, but some great players there too.
That electric cutting, McKenzie, DeLamalure, had looked the other guys up. You had Paul Seymour, Dave Foley, and Mike Monter also with that group there back in the day.
Great offensive line.
You had Joe Ferguson, the quarterback, not a bad quarterback, very efficient quarterback back in the day.
A better runner than a passer, but he could get it done in play action in other situations.
Others from the distant replay, even before Ferguson, you had Jack Kemp, not a bad quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, back in the old days when they were playing at War Memorial Stadium in Buffalo, the AAA baseball park before they moved to Rich Stadium, and Jack kept those early Buffalo teams in the old AFL were pretty good. We talked AFL a couple weeks ago, and that's a little more of the AFL flashback in there.
And Jim Kelly, I think he might have done some USFL maybe for a while. Houston Gamblers maybe down that way.
Played for Jack Pardee was his coach. Yeah,
and Jim Kelly with the Buffalo Bills had a great career there. Did not get the Super Bowl win, but he definitely was heading around there. It sure was.
Andre Reed, wide receiver, really good. On the defense, a guy I went to college with and knew a little bit, who's in the College Hall of Fame. I don't think he's in the NFL yet. Darryl Talley, outside linebacker.
Linebacker, exactly.
Very, very good player. Really tough guy. One of the toughest college football players I've ever seen. I went to school with him, and he was a bad man on the football field.
Yeah, I put him on our list here. I had to write him on the list of players. Other key names back in those days: the running back Thurman Thomas, excellent runner back in his day.
Oklahoma State, he was I believe right before Barry Sanders at Oklahoma State. Yeah.
And you mentioned Andre Reed. He had that game back in 1993 when Buffalo's down 35-3 to Houston, came back and won 3 touchdowns in the second half for Reed. And they called that the comeback back in those days.
And the quarterback on that team, I see that name on your sheet there, and he's a guy who has a very strong Panthers connection.
He does. Through the first 3, started the first 3 games, through the first touchdown pass to the Panthers, it was Frank Reich to Pete Metzler, another former Buffalo Bill.
And Pete Metzler, his name came up a few weeks ago. He's an assistant coach at Charlotte Christian, team that High Point Christian played, and could play again in a couple weeks in their playoffs.
The thing about Frank Reich, I thought, looking him up today, he was in that game against Houston when they had the great comeback there. He was also in a game from Maryland. They came back and beat Miami. They were down 31-0 at halftime. They came back, won that game 42-40 in overtime, or 42-38. But the crazy thing is, he was in a couple of great comeback games.
Yeah, he was the quarterback at Maryland right after Boomer Esiason. And another great name, but right. And I believe Reich is coaching somewhere. I think he's a quarterback's coach or offensive coordinator for somebody.
He's
right
been
now.
doing that.
I've heard his name a little bit the last few years as a guy who probably will be an NFL head coach.
He was with the Chargers for a while. I think he's been with the Eagles maybe recently too.
Yeah,
been around
a great football mind and a talented player in his own right.
Put up some good numbers against first quarterback to start for the Panthers back in their very beginnings. Some other good names out of that past too, going back from the Buffalo Bills back in the day. I'll throw this name out because this was the name that really got me started, going back to these Buffalo Bills, the name I like the most, because this guy was probably maybe not as known as the other guys as big, but Steve Tasker. That special teams guy.
I was going to say, one of the all-time great special teams players. He was a guy as a gunner and just a punt returner, just a dangerous player, and a really good receiver in his own right. He would fit in with the Patriots, the way they run guys now out of those slot positions. He would have made a killing at one of those spots like some of the guys that they have now.
They had another multi-purpose player, too, back in the day. We always kind of chuckle when we think about this guy. He was the punter and also the kicker and the linebacker, Paul McGuire.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the old
was a
days.
heck of a broadcaster. Was a color guy for a number of years. Was one of the original ESPN guys, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, he was funny during NFL games. He was uninhibited, I guess would be the way I would describe his color work on NFL games.
Very entertaining.
Yes.
No doubt about it. Paul McGuire back in the day, Buffalo Bills. Another name or two from our distant replay tonight on the Buffalo Bills who play the Jets tonight on the NFL Network. I don't think it's on CBS. NFL
no,
Network
I think this
tonight.
is one of the ones that it's just NFL Network.
Might be better for CBS not to have this one after last week's game when there was a 40-0 contest. And
yeah, that was not pretty. Yeah.
But another name or two to kind of mention tonight as we break it. Scott Norwood, the kicker back in the day, he has some memories.
Yeah,
and so I'm not
out
so
of
happy.
James Madison, yeah. Mm-hmm. That Giants team where I had it. I keep dropping names from when I went to school, West Virginia. The Giants quarterback that year was Jeff Hostetler because Phil Simms was hurt.
Wow.
And that was a Scott Norwood field goal that was missed that decided that Super Bowl. And at the time, I was very happy.
Tell you what, I got to throw another name in too. Ralph Wilson, the team owner, was with Buffalo for so long.
Stadium named for him now. It was Ridge Stadium for years, and now it's named for him. You know, he went back to deep in the AFL days with that team, and basically built that team from the ground up.
And the coach of all coaches, maybe in Buffalo back during the days, was probably Marv Levy.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you lost 4 Super Bowls, and that's.
But just to get there 4 straight years.
To get there all those times. And before he came to the NFL, he won 2 or 3 Grey Cups in Canada. Well, he was Kansas City's coach. He won 2 or 3 Grey Cups with Montreal in a Canadian league. And the guy was just a very, very good football coach. And by all accounts, players loved him. Players respected him. Just a great guy.
Very good mental coach. Knew the strategy very well.
Yeah.
And not a bad announcer either. Kind of guy like that. You think he takes over the announcer job, he's going to be kind of boring, kind of dry, but I thought he was not bad at all.
No, and we were talking about the last few weeks, a lot like Hank Stram.
Hank Stram, the same way.
Another guy who was considered an X's and O's genius.
Because he wore a white shirt and a tie. The coaches back then, he'd think that guy, well, this guy's going to be straight by the book. But he got on there. Great guy to listen to.
Yeah, and you learned something about the game, about the X's and O's, watching a game that those guys did, and I always enjoy that.
And they had a great partner, Jack Buck and Hank Stram.
Yeah.
Just a great combo back in the day, no doubt about that.
Yep.
And it was pretty much, they might have done some, mainly radio, too.
Yeah, CBS Network back in the day,
Back in the load. Another name, I don't leave this guy out, Bruce Smith, had to be one of the top players to come through Buffalo.
Yeah, Virginia Tech Hokie. He was a beast. I put him with Reggie White and maybe 2 or 3 other guys in terms of just utterly dominant pass rushing. And in Bruce Smith's case, he held up great against the run too, but just dominating defensive linemen. One of the all-time greats, no question.
Another name or two, Jerry Butler, that wide receiver out of Clemson. Heck of a receiver back in the day.
Clemson produced a lot of those guys. Mike Quick, Jerry Butler. I mean, there was a long run of really athletic, fast Clemson receivers there.
And another guy, too, I don't think I wrote his name down. I didn't type it. We don't write anymore. We do mainly type and do add some writing occasionally. But Jim Richard, who was a center, heck of a center.
NC State?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whale of a career.
Yeah. Great player. Didn't he have a son who played for State recently?
Did. I think he did, yeah.
But, yeah, he was another guy who, on those Super Bowl teams, was just, a perennial Pro Bowl center, a pro's pro, just a great player.
Just very steady, the kind of guy you look
That's
up.
what you want as your center.
You shouldn't even know he's there.
Yeah, you don't want to have to worry about snaps. You don't want to have to worry about blocking calls, and he took care of it.
And I guess you expect tonight that the game between the Bills and Jets, you've kind of leaned toward the Bills in this one tonight?
Yeah, they're playing good football right now. The Jets, I think, just 3 wins already for the Jets is actually kind of surprising, and they could have 4. That game with the Patriots, that controversial call on whether it was a touchdown or a fumble and a touchback was huge. I think the Jets have made some progress this year, but I think Buffalo has a lot more on the line in this game and will deliver.
It seems like those teams in the East always seem to make progress, every year or so to keep a little bit better and better, but you can never catch New England when it comes down to it.
Yeah, every once in a while you'll think, Buffalo might catch up, the Bills might, Miami might catch up, and then it seems like they get to a certain point and they don't get there, and then they fall back again. And as long as Tom Brady is in New England and healthy, and Bill Belichick's the coach, I'm not going to bet against them.
I saw a pretty good interview last weekend, maybe last Sunday, on the Sunday game. Ian Eagle and Dan Faust were doing the game, and he went back to an interview that Dan Faust did back when he was doing TV for a station out in San Diego. He was interviewing this high school kid named Tom Brady, which was really interesting to see that back in the day.
Yeah.
He said we had 4 kids we interviewed. We were trying to do the spotlight of the top quarterbacks in the area. Had Tom Brady, and so I said at the time, I thought that guy will do pretty well. And he's not done yet.
No, and Dan Fouts was a great quarterback on those years. We talked about Eric Coryell last week, those Chargers teams with Kellen Winslow and John Jefferson and all those guys. He obviously knows quarterback play, and he saw something that the Patriots saw, but I guess a lot of other NFL teams didn't. And Tom Brady, that Super Bowl last year, I was watching the game, and my wife said to me, "Why are you still watching this?" And I said, "It's Tom Brady. Let me stick with this a little longer." And I didn't know that they'd pull that off, but if he wasn't considered the greatest quarterback of all time before that game, I think that pretty much cemented it.
And if you get a chance, we probably should get Kelvin Benjamin to call up Kellen Winslow and try to get his old uniform, his old body, because the bodies were quite a bit alike from back in the day.
Yep.
Here's one to close out with tonight. Joe's here with us from the News and Record. First of all, let's close out. Before we close out with the real closeout, let's close out with this. Your picks tomorrow night, you're leaning toward Dudley, you're leaning toward
I like
Page.
Dudley in a close game. I think Page by 10, 14, in that range. I think their defense is good enough that Malachi Manis and that Ragsdale offense just isn't going to score enough points.
I don't know if anybody else has caught it that's been reading, but I catch the online work pretty regular, catch the News and Record, the print version, just to flip through it, because I've already seen most of it because it's been online. You guys are that quick already. But I think you and Spencer, maybe one game separates you guys in here. It's pretty interesting there.
For the season, I'm at about 78, 79%, and he's just like 1 percentage point or so behind. Last year it was really close too. He beat me in the regular season by, I think, a game, and then we cut it off there and kind of declared a champion. And this year, even though I was ahead, I said we're going to go through the playoffs this year and decide who gets the belt, as Spencer puts it.
Man, you can't beat that.
It's fun. It's a little friendly rivalry, and sometimes people say, well, we always seem to pick the same teams. We don't go into it thinking I want to be different. We don't look at each other's picks. He does his and I do mine, and if they line up the same, they line up the same, and they have for a lot of weeks.
And you want to be right.
We want to be right. That's
and you both picked High Point Christian this week, right?
Yes.
And that's a tough game for them against Providence Day, is it?
Yeah. When you look at comparables, when you look at teams that they both played, it's High Point Christian should be okay in that game.
Close out this week, we're going to go with we talked about how the papers and the online stuff could be influential. I was at a middle school game yesterday. It was Mendenhall versus Kaiser, and a mom came up. I was standing on the sideline trying to get a little video, get a few numbers down, whatever. And she came up and said, I want to just tell you something. I said, what's that? She said, my son said to tell you he's not 3'12". I said, what? She said, you mentioned on your website the little kid made the game-saving tackle, made a big tackle. He was out in the field in the game with Kaiser versus the little kid. I mentioned you a few weeks ago. This little kid makes a tackle. He's only about this big. I said, yeah, I listened to 3'12", just trying to get the point across. He said he loved it. He's like glad to get his name out there. It's kind of, but back in the day, a guy used to say, that guy's about 5'12". I said, I think he is. Yeah, you may be right about that. That used to come in occasionally back in the day. But a busy night tomorrow night for you guys. On the road, headed toward Winston for you, right?
Yeah, I got to leave early. If anyone out there is going to that Dudley Mount Tabor game, Business 40 and all the traffic issues, get there, leave very early, and listen to your GPS, because if there's a lot of construction delays and they're trying to reroute you, it's probably going to save you some time. But I'm planning on going over there early, getting something to eat right near the stadium, and making sure I'm there.
And last year, I remember going to that one time I made that trek last year, I was going to Moxon for the Davie County Dudley game. And it was a bear. It was a pain last year, too.
Well, you remember a few years ago when Page went over to Reagan, and the
it took
game
them all
started at about 9:30 because there were accidents on Business 40 and I-40. Page's bus got held up. And then on top of that, it ended up being like a 48-46 game or something like that, some high-scoring game. The game didn't end until after 11 o'clock.
Got through just barely in time for the 11 o'clock news.
Exactly, yeah.
I think the Fox 8 show came on at midnight. First time I get to see the TV, like maybe last week. Fox 8 comes at midnight because of the World Series baseball game.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going over there. Who's going to be elsewhere tomorrow night?
JP Mundy, who's been a regular for us as long as I've been doing it, he will be in Jamestown for Page at Ragsdale. And Tim Nash, a freelancer who does a lot of work for us and does a great job, he's going to be in Elon at the Northern Guilford Western Alamance game, and we will have a photographer for photo gallery and more from Grimsley Northwest. So,
Got them all split up, Ron. I got them going all directions.
Yep.
Joe, good job as always.
Andy, thank you. Appreciate it.